Hey, brothers, shalom. Um, I saw I saw this article not too long ago, last week. Oh yeah, the date is February 23rd. So 5 days ago, and I saved it because I saw that it was talking about the Varangians, and I said I got to make a lesson on this. And it's so funny that when I did the lesson on last names, I touched on this time period just a little bit, but yes, our people ruled Russia, ruled Ukraine, ruled Europe, right? The name Russia comes from when our people were ruling under the name Rus, right? Which is from the Old Norse, which is rups, meaning rowers, right? Why were we the rowers? Well, we were seamen, right? Coming from the the Phoenicians, right? We were the Vikings, right? And going into the Norsemen and into the Rus people, right? That's where you get the name Belarus, right? Belarus also comes from the Rus people, right? So our history is vast, man. And it's a blessing too, because you have to understand that we've been taught that we were nothing when really and truly we are everything. The whole structure of this society stands on what our ancestors did and left, right? Not only going into the structures that we built, right? The megalithic structures, or just the castles, or mathematics. And a lot of times, I'm going to be honest, a lot of times these things weren't even done by Israelites. A lot of these things were done by black Hamites, black Africans, very intelligent people. But we joined forces with them, right? Especially as the Phoenicians, we joined forces with them, and as the Vikings, we joined forces with them. Did not King Solomon do business with that was his navy at that time? His name is eluding me right now. I'm gonna tell the brothers. Let me get it. This is First King, chapter 9 and 26. And King Solomon made a navy of ships in Eziongeber, which is beside Eloth, on the shore of the Red Sea, in the land of Edom. And Hiram sent in the navy his servants, shipmen that had knowledge of the sea, with the servants of Solomon. So, did we do business with these seamen? Yes, we did. Was Hiram an Israelite? No, he wasn't. This is Hiram the first. And that's how you know Esau is a liar. Because Hiram was a Phoenician, right? King of Tyre. And these were black Africans. And look at the picture that this man has on the screen. Look at this picture. That's how you know that you so-called white people are the devil. What does devil mean? Deceiver. You can't help it but to deceive. Even when it's obvious, right, as to who certain figures are in history, you still have to paint over them or make them look Caucasian or blonde hair, which is just madness. Madness, right? Hiram the first was the Phoenician king of Tyre. According to the Hebrew Bible, his regnal years have been calculated by some as 980 to 947 BC, right? So back to the article. It says, as Russia celebrates Veterans Day, Here's how the country fought in different periods of its 1,000-year history. It says how military service in the world's largest country has evolved from czars, right, to Bolsheviks, to the modern state, right? And the people that you see today, like in the picture that we're looking at, these are Edomites, right? These are not the people that were ruling 1,000 years ago. Okay, it says, for over 100 years, Russia has celebrated Defender of the Fatherland Day on February 23rd. The holiday, which originally glorified the Red Army, took on wider meaning after the fall of the USSR. Presently, the holiday sees Russians celebrating all those who served in the military in defense of their country. It is roughly equivalent to the American Veterans Day or the British Armed Forces Day. The military has always been respected in Russia, but over the country's 1,000-year history, the system has undergone many changes. Why? Because there has been a change of rulership. Okay. Now this is what caught my eye. Varangians, strangers from the north. Right? Let's read what they wrote. It said, at the dawn of the existence of Rus, right, which is where the country name Russia comes from, right? But where did we get that name Rus? Well, it came from Israelites, right? It was known as the Rurik, right? Rurik dynasty, right? And who were ruling? Who was ruling at that time? King Rurik, right? Who was a black man from Sweden, right? He's the one that founded the Rus state, right? But he was from Sweden. What does that mean? That means black people also ruled Sweden, right? That's why a lot of times you see them with that braid. There's a particular type of braid, right, that was braided here that we used to have in Sweden. Let me see if I can find a picture of it. See? It says Swedish braids and the hair braided back. And it's so funny that who are they showing? They're showing Edomite women or so-called white women, right? When I say Edomite, Edomite is the biblical nationality of you so-called white people. White is just a corporate title given to you so-called Caucasians. Caucasian would be a better name because Caucasian means cave dweller, and that's where the majority of you white people dwelled, right? In the time of the medieval period, or in this time the Rurik period, right? Or the Rurik rulership. Right? And look what the first thing says. It says Viking braids. It says crown braid, but the first one says Viking braid. Let's go into the Viking braid. See, this is the Viking braid, right? But they keep showing Edomites. This wasn't the style for you Caucasians. You Caucasians never came up with this. The hair braided back was an Israelite style. That's you so-called black people, not you so-called Caucasians. Why? How do we know? First of all, you Caucasians don't even keep that style. That's a style that so-called black people have kept all the way up to this time. Right? You so-called white people, you're not even good at doing braids by yourself. Like, stop this. Stop this. Why? Because that's not your history. That is not your history. Right? It says, at the dawn of the existence of Rus, the Slavic tribes that populated the land that would become Russia had no army of their own. Whenever conflicts became violent, they resembled wall-on-wall fistfights. These confrontations continued in this manner until the Slavs learned the art of war from their northern neighbors and colonizers, the Varangians, right? And who were the Varangians? right? And before I even get into that, the word Slavs is where the word slave comes from. So who are the original slaves? Well, the original slaves are you Slavic people or you serfs, right? Which is you Caucasians, right? You were the servants of the dark-skinned people that ruled as czars, right? And under different monikers that they had during the medieval period, right? And these different periods that they had, or these different rulership. This one that we're speaking about is the Rurik rule. Okay. And so who were the Varangians? The Varangians were Vikings, right? And they traveled down many waterways of the eastern Baltic Sea, right? And they went into Central Asia, they went into India, they went into China, right? And what does that mean? That means that our people are scattered throughout these places, which is one of the curses that would befall who? That would befall the Israelites, right? Let's get it. This is First Peter chapter 1 and 1. Peter, an apostle of Yahushua Mashiach, right? Because his real name is Yahushua. It's not Jesus, right? There's no J in the Hebrew, right? There's no J in the Aramaic, right? J is a new letter that was created during the 1600s, right? So no. It says, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, right? So these are just some of the places that you Israelites were scattered throughout, right? Asia, just like I mentioned, right? This is Psalms 44 and 11. Thou hast given us like sheep appointed for meat, and hast scattered us among the heathen. Why? Because we turned our backs on the Heavenly Father, and the Heavenly Father gave us for a prey onto these other nations. And what do? We start worshiping the deities and the idols of these other nations. That was one of our curses, right? This is James 1 and 1. James, a servant of Yahweh and of the Lord Yahushua Mashiach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. Greeting. Okay? So that where were we? We were scattered abroad. And I'm just dealing with the Vikings right now and how far they went and how they became the Varangians, they became the Norsemen. Okay? Right? So like I was saying, they went into Central Asia, they went into India, China, right? And this was known as the Volga trade route. Also the Dnieper River, right? Let's get the Dnieper River just so we can show how vast and how great the Varangians were, or the Vikings, right? Hold on.
The Dnieper River explained in under 3 minutes. Chapter 1. The flow of the Dnieper River. The 2,200-kilometer long journey of Europe's fourth longest river starts off in the Valdai Hills in western Russia.
Europe's fourth longest river, right? So this was a great trade route for our people, right? Especially during that time, it was a time of Emperor Basil, right? Emperor Basil the First, and he was ruling Constantinople, right, at that time, and he converted many of the pagans aka barbarians, right? Aka Rus people, aka Vikings, aka Phoenicians, aka Israelites, right? Because these are all our people. They just went under different monikers or different names at that time, right? And Emperor Basil the First converted them to Christianity, which was also merged with paganism, right? Because at that time, it's not like Constantinople was some righteous place. No, there was a lot of wickedness, especially with the forefathers of that stuff going into Constantine, right? And the Nicene Council, the Council of Nicaea, right? They had Sunday worship, they had Easter, right? There was a whole bunch of wickedness going on in that whole setup.
Between the cities of Moscow and St. Petersburg. For the first half, it is a small and winding river which traverses four.
Right? Do you see Belarus? Belarus. That's where the name came from. That's Belarus comes from the Rus people. That's where it comes from. Right? So you people today who are living in Belarus, that is not your land. It's not yours.
180 kilometers through Russian and 700 kilometers through Belarusian territory. Starting off as a small stream through swampy forests, a total of 32,000 tributaries flow into the course of the Dnieper, with 89 of these being large rivers themselves, with lengths of over 100 kilometers. 5 of the largest of these tributaries are the Berezina, Soch, Pripet, Tetriv, and Desna, which together supply 80% of the Dnieper's total volume. After forming the Ukrainian-Belarusian border and passing through Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, the characteristics of the river change dramatically. The Ukrainian half of the Dnieper River is shaped by enormous reservoirs, which have been artificially created for the extraction of hydropower. Stations built in Kiev, Kaniv, Kremchuk, Dniprodzerzhinsk, and Kharkovka flood the majority of the middle and lower Dnieper, and together create over 6,500 square kilometers of reservoirs. After the water passes the last dam in Kharkovka, the Dnieper estuary splits into many smaller streams and islands before draining into the Black Sea. The Dnieper plays a vital role in the Ukrainian economy, which brings us to Chapter 2, Dnieper's impact on Ukraine. When looking at a map of Ukraine...
Right, and going into Ukraine, what does that mean? That means that we also ruled in Ukraine, or Kiev, right? Hold on. Right? This is a Russian icon. Icons of Prince Vladimir, Boris, Gleb, right? This says the life of Boris and Gleb. These are all so-called black men that ruled during this time period, man. All so-called black men and black women, Israelite men and Israelite women that went under these different names. Right? Right? It says the original Russians, right? Kostenksy, Ukrainian Russian. Okay? It says Shungarman, Vladimir, right? Russia. Right?
This impact on Ukraine. When looking at a map of Ukraine, the Dnieper River, with its many reservoirs, is the most striking feature of the country. Looking at its economic value for the country, it is no less important. 3 of the 6 largest Ukrainian cities are located on the banks of the river, and it is one of the main means of transportation connecting the inland with the Black Sea, and through a series of canals and locks, even to the Baltic. The aforementioned dams along the Ukrainian section of the Dnieper River are all equipped with locks, which allows the passage of barges
and that's how we got around. Well, obviously, this land is now under rule of you Caucasians, right? The biblical Edomites. So it is what it is. But we used to be the rulers of this land. Okay, let's go back. It says the Varangian Guard, which took control of the trade route that passed through central Rus, which we just saw, right, to the Greek civilizations, which means that they traded called themselves rowers, right? Which is true, which is where the name comes from. It's from Old Norse, rops, meaning rowers, right? Which lets you know who they came from. They were the Vikings, because what were the Vikings known for as well? Shipbuilding, right? They were sea people, right? Which lets you know that they were who? They were also the Phoenicians, right? Same thing as the pirates, right? Pirates of the Caribbean, who were so-called black men. Who were they? They were the same people. The same people, right? These were sea people, right? That's why when you check out their rulerships, they were always by the sea. Even when we went into the southern part of Italy, right? Even when we went into the southern part of the Italy, it was right by the water. Okay, and it says the Varangian Guard took control of the trade route that passed through central Rus to the Greek civilization, called themselves rower, since they used rowboats in their military campaigns. It is thought that the ancient Scandinavian word rupper at some point evolved into the similar sound in Rus. It is highly likely that the future name of Russia, I already said that, yes, of Russia, thus sprang from the self-designated name of the Varangian warriors. Yes, it did, and also Belarus, right? It's highly likely. Man, you Edomites, man, you like to take, but you don't like to give credit where credit is due. That's the problem with you Edomites, man, you so-called white people. You're a bunch of thieves, but then you don't give credit to where credit is due. You obfuscate. You know, like you're cryptic with your words. It's highly likely that the future name of Russia thus sprang from the self-designated name of the Varangian warriors. Yes, the Rus. Like, come on. It's not hard to tell, man. It says the people of Rus wore simple shirts and helmets that were mainly armed with spears and axes, while a sword marked a warrior's status. That's not true. Yeah, that's not true. When you check out, because there were artifacts found of them all the way in Asia, which is why I mentioned in all these different places, and they laid out their helmets. Let me see if I could find that, and the protective wear as well. So no, that's not true. It says armor of the emperor's Varangians. Now, one thing I can say is that you have the Varangians before they became the emperor's Varangians, right? Because that didn't happen until Vladimir, when Vladimir the Great married Emperor's Basil. So Emperor Basil the second sister, her name was Anna. And when Vladimir the Great married her, what was their son's name again? Vladimir the Great and Anna's son. Something the Wise. Damn, I can't remember his name. Something the Wise, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. So before the Varangians became the emperor's guards, they used to just go around as mercenaries. They were really, really good though, but they weren't official, right? They became official after the merger, right? After that merger of Anna and Vladimir the Great, because at that time, so it was about, I don't know, maybe about 5,000 to 6,000 Varangian soldiers that Vladimir the Great had. right? So to stop the overthrow, because at that time they were planning on overthrowing the Emperor Basil II. They were planning on overthrowing him. So he linked up with Vladimir the Great, married his sister, and then the Varangians became official, right? Because now they were protected by the emperor. They were his guards, right? And they traveled through the Mediterranean. They were in Syria, Bulgaria, right? One of the famous battles that was in when was that? Shoot, 1018, around 1018, the Battle of Cannae or Cannae. I'm not saying it correctly, right? In Italy, right? They face other Israelites known as the Lombards, who hired Norsemen mercenaries, right? But the Lombards who were being fought, the Lombards who hired the Norsemen, who were also Israelites, right? So it was Israelite versus Israelite, Norsemen versus Varangians, right? Who were brothers, but the Norsemen, they got massacred by the Varangians, right? Even King, if you watch the Vikings, even King Harold of Denmark, what does that mean? That means we ruled even Denmark. Yeah. The Danes are coming. So even King Harold of Denmark served in the Varangian Guard, right? Yeah, man, the Varangians were the guys at that time, man. Right? It says the Varangians were an infantry unit, though of course an elite one, as they are not mentioned in the Byzantine manuals. We can only guess that they were provided with somewhat better armor than the ordinary infantry. Of course, they even linked up. Oh man, you know what? Let's keep reading. Somewhat better armor than the ordinary infantry. There is some later evidence that they were a mounted infantry unit, like English Huscarls. That is, they rode to battle but fought on foot, as at Dairishkian in 1018. This might allow them to have armor as heavy as the normal cavalrymen, an iron helmet and mail coat, see, okay, or lemar corselet, according to Anna Komina. Fatigue from their rapid advance and weight of armor contributed to their defeat by Robert Guiscard's forces at Hashkion. So they didn't just wear t-shirts. So there is no archaeological remains of any arm and leg armors from Byzantium itself. Despite this, many popular works present splinted limb armor as typical Byzantine, but in reality, there is only a little evidence from art of the period to suggest that splinted limb defense could have been in use in the Balkans, Asia Minor region during the middle period of the empire. Given this lack of information, what then is behind the popular and ingrained depiction of Varangian guardsmen wearing splints on their arms and legs? Several burials of fully equipped warriors have been excavated in Sweden, okay, which is where we were as well, right? Of course, we were in Sweden, because the King Rorik, right, who founded the Rus people, he was from where? He was also from Sweden. It says at Vendel and Valsgard, One mound, Valsgard grave 8, included splint and mail armor for one arm and both legs. Of course they did. These were men who were making money. Okay? See how they had armor? They had really good armor. All right, of course they did. How do I go back? Okay. It says the people of Rus wore simple shirts and helmets. They were mainly armed with spears and axes, while a sword marked a warrior's superior status. We just prove what they wore. It says they fought on foot, moving along rivers on boats, which I concur. It's true. They really didn't fight on horses, right? These were sea people. It says on boats called Jakars, which were rolled over rapids. The Varangians engaged in the great Viking tradition of trade and raids, pretty much the same as in Western Europe at that time. Yes, agreed. One of the most famous Varangians and first rulers of the Rus was Grand Prince Svetoslav, who fought Bulgaria, the Byzantine Empire, and the Khazars, Khaganate. Some sources mention large raids as far away from the center of Rus as the southern Caspian lands, which is true. And this image that you see, that is not him. That is not him. We did not look like that. We were dark-skinned people, man. Right? What you people are trying to do, you're trying to mesh who you see today with the Israelites, man. Right? That's what you're trying to do. This is Isaiah 11, verse 11. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again, the second time, to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, right, which is Ethiopia, and from Elam, which is India, which we mentioned, and from Shinar. And when we say and from Elam, the brother Kanawak said he's going to do a video on Elam. If he doesn't, I'll get into it, because our people are definitely scattered there, going by different names, right? They are the untouchables, or the what are they? Oh man, the cities as well, right? And from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. And that's why these lessons are so important, because our people seem to think that we only have history in Africa, which we do. We do have a vast history in Africa, right? We are on the west coast of Africa, right? In different places like Ghana, Nigeria, the Ivory Coast, right? The Congo, Sierra Leone, Senegal. We're in all these different places in Africa, but Africa was not our only stop. And that was not our only time period of rule, right? We ruled in many different places, just like we're reading now, right? Which is the Rorik dynasty, right? Under the Varangians. And we were also ruling where? In Constantinople, like we just heard, right? Under Constantine the Great. But at that time of the Varangians were doing business with Emperor Basil II. Okay, so our history is amazing, man. right? But with that, I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakudash. Double honors unto the elders and elder apostles of GMS that do rule well and that do teach well, and to the brothers on the four corners of the earth doing this work in truth and in sincerity. Shalom. Till next time. Kwame Asherallah.